This story was interesting to me. I covered probably over 1,000 murders committed at the time I was a reporter. This case was a big deal. It was done in a very exclusive neighborhood in Wellington. And the other thing was what the person used for the disguise. A clown costume. That caught the public's imagination. This is 1501 North Dixie Highway, which used to be Bargain Motors, which was owned by Michael and Marlene Warren. And I can tell you one thing that you're not going to read in the newspapers. The police really wanted Michael Warren. They really felt that this guy had been involved in the murder of Marlene Warren. But they had to prove it. I wouldn't have thought something so simple as a clown suit could create so much cover for a suspect. The police and the public really, really wanted to find out who did this to Marlene.
There's no way anybody's going to know who I am, is there?
Almost immediately after the murder, the police were getting anonymous phone calls saying you should look into Michael Warren and Sheila Keene. And they were having an illicit affair. So they started to check out Sheila Keene.
Mike hired Sheila Keene to work for him. And she repossessed cars.
Sheila Keene had very long dark hair and very dark brown eyes. She was described as a very tough country girl.
She is from an area in Florida that's very rural. She doesn't have a squeaky clean record. Not a criminal mastermind. There was a shoplifting charge when she was a young, dumb kid.
Somehow, Sheila got into the repo business. That's not an easy business to be in. Because basically what your job is to steal cars, but legally. Because the car that you're taking, the owner doesn't want you to have it. Not everybody can do that for a living.
Are you having an affair with Sheila? No. Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about that. Positive.
When police interviewed him, Michael always denied the affair with Sheila Keene, always denied it.
Sheila Keene also said their relationship was strictly business.
This is Detective Bill Williams. The date is 5/27/90. This will be an interview with Sheila Keene.
You sure you're not having a relationship with Mike?
No, not at all.
Just a friendship?
Good friend. He's been great helping me work.
Reportedly, this is like the worst kept secret in town. Employees of Bargain Motors know that there's something going on between these two.
Mike wasn't one to hide anything. You know, he would leave the door wide open in his office. She'd have sex right there on his lap. Marlene wasn't around. Of course, any guy that can get a younger woman, he's not gonna hide if she's willing to do it in front of everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Hey, look what I got here. You know, this is my trophy. Mike's always been a player. He was married, but he wasn't married. You know, in his head, he'd go on and do what he wanted.
2 weeks before the homicide, employees at Bargain Motors said that they had noticed that Sheila had become more possessive, more demanding of Michael.
Sheila didn't like me and my brother because we hung out with Mike all the time. That took time away from her and him. You could tell that she wanted Mike to herself.
She's bad news.
Is there anything specific you can tell us about as far as how you form that opinion? Is that just
Over-possessive. Is that how you say it?
Now law enforcement starts to see the motive. Is it a love relationship that would involve money, all of which are common motives for homicides?
Michael was trying to stop him. He kept saying, Sheila, you need to go, I'm busy. But the more he did, the more she came back. And I told Mike, I said, somebody's gonna get hurt out of this. But I'd never dream of Marlene.
About 6 months before my mom's murder, we had a party at my house in Wellington. That's the day I met Sheila Kane Moore. When she came in, she had a bag of alligator tail. It was all chopped up in squares, ready to be cooked. Mike's mother, Joyce, says, hey, Marlene, you better watch that one. She's a pretty one. And my mom, she said, is that the only thing you're helping him with? To Sheila. And she turned around with a smirk and just smiled and said, yeah, and then turned back around.
Mike just pushed Marlene away, didn't hug her anymore. They didn't do anything together anymore. She was like being put on the back burner. She felt positive that Mike was cheating on her. A lot of her hope she just gave up on.
you didn't do it?
I did not do it.
All this evidence is just stacking up Sheila.
Well, all I'm saying is somebody's trying to make it look like me. I've never had a conflict. I don't know anybody that's got one.
Law enforcement interviewed Sheila on the day of the homicide. She only was able to indicate to them, I was repossessing some vehicles pretty far south of West Palm Beach.
Did you make contact with anybody while you were down there?
Mm-hmm. I just drove down there and looked for the car. You know, didn't see it, didn't see anybody, and it was raining.
What kind of cars were they you were supposed to pick up?
I don't have any idea.
When asked for details about where did you go, who did you speak to see if they could follow up, and she was unable or unwilling to give them the name of anybody she'd spoken to or any address that she'd gone to.
Sheila's alibi is shaky at best. That's a problem.
This year, when you're shopping for a costume, you might want to consider makeup instead of a plastic or rubber mask. Besides, makeup is in this year. There are all sorts of paints and sprays.
So immediately after the homicide, law enforcement decided to see what establishments might have sold or rented a clown outfit. And one of the most popular ones was the costume store Spotlight Capizio, south of Bargain Motors.
My name is Barbara Castricone.
And my name is Deborah Offord. In the early 1990s, we worked at Spotlight Capizio.
Back then, you couldn't get a costume online. There was no online ordering, so you either made your costume or you came to the Spotlight. I received a phone call, and there was a detective on the line. He said, had anybody recently either inquired or been in the shop or purchased a clown costume?
And you had called me to asking me about the clown costume. Right. And I don't think it really hit me until I saw it on the news. It was a Thursday. It was just about 6 o'clock. We were getting ready to leave the premises, and this woman knocks on the door saying, can I come in? I need something really quick. And I said, well, we've closed for the day. Can you come back tomorrow? And she said, well, I really need these things today. I really need them now. So we let her in, and she said that she needed a clown costume. And so I walked her over to that part of the store. So she said it was for a woman. She chose one. She said she also needed a orange wig. And then she had asked about the clown makeup. She needed something that was more of a full coverage for her face, and she paid cash. She was very pleasant, like a typical customer would be. And she was on her way, and we closed up and then went into the weekend. A couple days after the call to Barbara, the police had brought a couple sheets of pictures to see if there was somebody there that we recognized. I was actually very, very nervous about the whole thing because you don't want to get somebody in trouble. I think I had narrowed it down to 2. And what I noticed were those big brown eyes and the way that they had like a little bit of a downturn, almost like a little bit of a sadness to them, as well as her smile and then the long brown hair. I had to make a decision at that point and said to the police, this is my choice. This is the woman who I think bought the costume.
Cops have this big break in the case. They found the clown car.
Joey said that the clown walked back to a white Chrysler LeBaron. So law enforcement had put out the bolos for a white Chrysler LeBaron style car, and then by happenstance, the manager at a nearby shopping center called to report that there appeared to be an abandoned white Chrysler LeBaron in the parking lot. About 8 miles from Marlene Warren's house.
We raced out there to see what was going on. And by the time I got to the scene, they were fingerprinting it with tweezers, looking for filaments or hair or whatever they were looking for. And they were out there for hours.
When they processed the car, there was hair and there were fibers that were consistent with the fibers that would have come from a clown wig. But what was notable was the car had been stolen by Bargain Motors. It had been reported stolen by quite a large car rental agency called Payless Car Rental.
Bargain Motors had an ad that used the words pay less. People would call Bargain Motors and say, hey, have I reached Payless? And someone at Bargain Motors was like, oh yeah, that's us.
A husband and wife had rented that white Chrysler LeBaron some time before the homicide. And when they went to go to return it, the wife looked up what she thought was the Payless phone number in the phone book.
And they called and said, look, we're running late. Can we leave the car here? I'm looking right out at them, right outside our fence. Yeah, just leave the keys there. Mike and Sheila was there. And they said, well, we'll take it. So they jumped in the car and then they drove off together. After that, it lands up in a Winn-Dixie parking lot.
Right around the time of the employee at the costume shop who had positively identified Sheila and the car being found, law enforcement felt that it was sufficient to apply for a search warrant of Sheila Keene's home to search for a clown outfit, clown makeup, and evidence of a homicide.
So detectives say that they recover fibers, maybe from a clown's wig, and of course it's her apartment, so they're going to find her hair. So they say that they've got quite a lot of physical evidence to work with.
Did this lead to an arrest?
No. There's no arrest.
There's always a fear of if you act too soon, you only get one attempt. And maybe there's some more forensic evidence we can discover.
I was working with the cops in every way I possibly could, but the police officers weren't working fast enough. You know, I couldn't live with it anymore, you know, and I was just a walking shell of a man.
My opinion of this case, the sheriff's office investigation wasn't as complete as it should have been, because once the sheriff's office zoned in on Sheila Keene, that's all they cared about. If there was accomplices or if somebody else was involved, we don't know. Michael and Sheila weren't the only suspects. They missed some opportunities to investigate further in solving the case.
I'm absolutely convinced that there's more to the story than has been told. My gut instinct tells me this couple was involved. I had such conviction that I needed to make this phone call, and I needed to report what I had seen and heard. It's quite odd. It's almost eerie, to be honest. In 1990, I was 21 years old, and this was my home. So my mother-in-law owned the apartment complex, Part of what I did for a living was help with the turnover of these apartments. So when someone would move out, I would go in and see if there was any viable furniture to be sold. On this particular week, she had asked me if I would mind going into a nearby apartment. Just even coming upon the door is sort of giving me the chills. A woman answered the door, and I asked if I could come in. She said they were leaving the country, and she left the room for a moment, and I had glanced over. Oh my God, I'm never gonna forget it, and saw what appeared to me to be a clown costume, halfway in and halfway out of a small box in the hallway. And there were clown figurines all over the apartment. And I spied a photo on the entertainment unit. And in the photo, it was a group photo, was the woman who had been killed by the clown. And as the woman walked back into the room, she immediately grabbed the photo out of my hand. She seemed nervous. And I asked her why she had a photograph of this woman. She proceeded to tell me that her boyfriend knew Michael Warren. I knew something was odd. It just added to my suspicion that they may have had something to do with this crime. I made a phone call to the police department. And I never heard from anybody again. In my mind and in my heart, I absolutely believe both of them were involved. The investigation, in my opinion, got it wrong with Sheila Keene. And I will go to my grave believing that wholeheartedly.
I get this anonymous tip. There was going to be a raid at Bargain Motors. And I said, well, what for? And he said, I can't tell you what for. Just be there. We were kind of hiding over there, and then we saw all the police cars rushing into the parking lot with lights and sirens. And the police just swarmed into the building. All you saw was massive amount of detectives for hours and hours rummaging through every single document and computer they could find.
There's a little family restaurant at the corner. We're good friends with them. And he calls us up. He says, hey, Mike, if I was you guys, I would leave. He goes, there's about 35, 40 cops here, and they're coming to raid your building. Mike and I, we jump in his plane. We take off to the Bahamas. We land, we're sitting at a bar in a restaurant, but we're on TV, me and Mike. They have the same news that we have. Channel 5 and 12 is the local news. There's some guy sitting at the bar, he's looking at us like, hey, that looks like the guy's on TV. So obviously we called our attorneys, we had to turn ourselves in.
After the raid, the sheriff's department charged Michael Warren. We thought it was going to be about the murder in Wellington, but it wasn't. It was about bad business practices.
6157. 6157. So a year after the murder,
there were still no major leads, and detectives were getting desperate. So they did something radical.
So the sheriff's office holds a press conference, and they make it public. We think we have some suspects in this case. It's Mike, the husband, and Sheila, the mistress.
The detectives wanted the murder in the paper all the time to create pressure on Michael Warren and whoever did this, and hoping that somebody would make a mistake and cough something up.
Mike is still awaiting trial for his auto crime charges.
And after the sheriff's office says that he's a suspect, Mike wants an opportunity to clear his name, and he wants to speak out. So he goes onto a local radio station's morning talk show.
It's been a tragic thing, and it's been like living in hell for the last year that it's happened. And I'm just tired of being kicked around by the sheriff's department for using the media as a whipping tool to say whatever they feel like.
He says, they've been looking at me from the very beginning. If I was the suspect, why wouldn't I have been arrested? He's also going to say how much he loves Marlene and misses her.
I feel like I should say something that at least fight back.
He was trying to prove that he didn't have anything to do with my mom's murder. Until then, I had to believe him. Because he was the only family that I had.
Mr. Warren, do you know anything about the shooting of your wife?
I do not know any more than the fact that what my son has told me at the time that he was at the house.
I started putting pieces together. He was promising me we will start a business. I will give you half the insurance policy so you can buy a house or something. Telling me everything, thinking, okay, he's my dad, he's gonna be there for me. Well, guess what? He wasn't.
Mike ended up getting the life insurance. More important than that life insurance was the assets. So that's the home in the Aero Club, and that's the businesses. Those aren't in Marlene's name anymore. Mike is the owner of those things now. So Mike got a payday, but nothing for Joey.
Mike took all the money, everything. And after the newspaper saying that they had an affair, and I knew, right then I knew that Michael Warren had something to do with my mom's murder. He had me pretty brainwashed.
So the detectives were not able to charge him with the murder, but they were able to charge him with the misdoings over at Bargain Motors.
A few people had expressed, is this nothing more than a childish, we can't get the murderer, so we're going to get Michael for whatever silliness we can get him, like it's almost like a payback.
Even the judge was kind of like, if your wife hadn't been killed, I don't even know that we would be here.
When Mike got out of prison, it was a short phone call, but he called me just to say, have a good life. It was just sickening to me. I tried to trace it to find out where he was at, but I never did. That was the very last time I spoke to Michael Warren. Michael Warren took everything. Mike ruined my life. I had abandonment issues, alcohol issues. I had so many issues because of that man. It was so hard. Mike's arrest made me feel glad that they did get something. But to not get total justice for my mother is not justice to me. It really eats me up inside, but I didn't let it kill me.
One of the reasons why I believe that the case became a cold case was the clown suit was actually a good disguise. If it was almost any other type of costume where the face wasn't painted and you didn't have a big wig on your head, that maybe somebody could have identified somebody faster. The other thing I think was they never went into the house, there wasn't any kind of struggle, and then they just simply walked back to their car and drove away. There isn't a lot of physical evidence.
They always thought that Mike and Sheila had something to do with this. They brought it to the prosecution and the state attorney's office a couple of times, and the prosecution would say, nope, there's not enough here, you gotta go back, bring me more. So they never had enough to move the case forward to a prosecution. Even though they liked Sheila and Mike for it, just wasn't enough there.
After Mike got released, Mike kind of disappeared. Sheila, I was told she went and lived with her brother out of state.
With nobody wanting to talk, it went cold. I felt mad, angry, hurt, disrespected for Marlene. She didn't deserve this.
The biggest plus for an investigator is patience. It's not at all like you would see in the films where everything is wrapped up within an hour or two. It could take decades to bring a case to conclusion. From the very beginning, the detectives had a pretty strong suspicion who killed Marlene Warren. We got lucky and had another shot to bring the case to a close. We couldn't believe when we found out that Mike and Sheila were now together. My name is Mark Anderson. I'm an investigator for the State Attorney's Office in Palm Beach County, Florida. When the case was reopened, a little bit of research online revealed that in 2002, out in Las Vegas, Nevada, Mike Warren actually married Sheila Keene.
Everybody said, oh my gosh, you know, it was true. It was a validation for what everybody's suspicions were.
Sheila had been the #1 suspect from day one. To realize that they became married, I don't think Stephen King on his best day could come up with something like that.
I don't think that it's weird that Michael Warren would stand by Sheila. Some of it may be self-preservation. You know, there's always that possibility if you decide to discard Sheila, she may tell what she knows, if she knows something.
We found out that Mike and Sheila were living happily ever after in the small town of Abingdon, Virginia.
This was a fantastic new life for them. They're gonna buy a big house on a lake. They're gonna have parties. They became fixtures of the community. You put the murder of Marlene in the rearview mirror, and you start with a clean slate.
They were running a business a very short distance over the state line into Tennessee, a restaurant called the Purple Cow.
My name is Mark Archer. I'm from Kingsport, Tennessee, and I used to work at the Purple Cow. You can't go inside and eat. It's just a drive-through. There was subs, to steaks, to burgers, to fish, you name it. My bosses were named Mike and Debbie Warren.
Sheila wasn't Sheila in this new life. She started going by Debbie.
Everybody called her Debbie, and that's the only name that we knew of. Even her brother worked there, and he called her Debbie. Mike and Debbie Warren hired me as a cook. They were nice, welcome, seemed like a decent place to be. Most owners of a restaurant normally ain't there. They were there every single day.
Looking at the menu, the largest hamburger available for purchase was called Mike's Intimidator, obviously named after Mike Warren.
If you're there for a full year at Purple Cow, you was eligible to go on a cruise. Mike and Debbie paid for everything. The only thing that I had to pay for was alcohol and soda. They were generous people to a certain point, but they were also kind of greedy people. They would save every drop out of a ketchup bottle, but then they'd go out and buy over $100,000 car. You know, certain things that they did was kind of odd to me, so.
Tell me, what do you know about Mike and Debbie?
They seem like pretty good people that helped us out when we need be. I mean, we need a little money. They help us out, give it to us, and just take it out when we get paid.
How would you describe Mike and Debbie?
Horrible. They were just too mean and pretty much suckered people into having to stay there.
What did you think about Debbie?
She was a bitch, honestly.
We interviewed several dozen people who had worked for Mike and Sheila. Some people thought Debbie was just a wonderful person. Some people really disliked her, said that she ran the place with an iron fist. People said the same thing about Mike.
had arguments with Mike. I can tell Mike does have a temper. I've heard him disrespect a few workers. I heard a lot of rumors, don't piss Debbie off, she'll stab you. Her brother, he'd be like, my sister's crazy. I mean it, she's crazy.
There was a tradition on Halloween Day at the Purple Cow that you could dress as a character.
Debbie and Mike did like for us to dress up if we wanted to. One time, I've seen Debbie dress up like a clown with a wig and some makeup on.
She went to all the trouble to change her name, and they were very careful not to talk about their history in Florida, and yet she had the nerve to dress up as a clown one Halloween for fun. The goal in 2014 was to see what physical evidence had survived all those years. You hope when you pull a cold case off the shelf that there's technology that 24 years later could help link a suspect to a particular piece of evidence. So we package the hair fiber evidence and send it off. Most of it to the FBI, which is one of the premier crime labs in the world.
In the 90s, they had some strong circumstantial evidence, but they did not have enough to make an arrest. Federal money enabled them to invest manpower and new technology, and forensic science has improved a lot since the 90s. They know this is going to be a big opportunity.
The goal really was to get people at the lab, at the FBI, to say, yes, we have enough to bring it to court. That would be a huge victory right there. By my watch, it's about 5:40 p.m. on Tuesday, September 26, 2017.
18 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, okay.
We had received information of sufficient strength to get a warrant for first-degree murder.
With the advancements in DNA technology, we were able to say scientifically that the hair in the LeBaron was Sheila Keene's.
She didn't seem concerned about her arrest. She didn't ask any questions about her arrest.
Apparently, the first words that she said basically were, "Are you going to arrest my husband too?"
Why would Sheila / Debbie wonder if we were arresting Mike as well?